here in the Gettysburg National Cemetery, and behind me is what's known as the Soldiers' National Monument. It was near that spot that on November 19th, 1863, a few thousand people gathered here for the dedication of a national cemetery, one of the first in our nation's history. And the main speaker that day was a man named Edward Everett, who was from New England, and he was known as one of the great orators of the day. And he spoke for about 2 hours. Gave this long, eloquent speech that everyone agreed was great at the time. And President Lincoln, who was invited almost as an afterthought, was asked to share. That famous line that was given was, "A few appropriate remarks." And Lincoln stood up and in about 2 minutes gave one of the most eloquent speeches in the history of the English language. A speech that many people at the time said was awful and was embarrassing and was beneath the dignity of the office of President of the United States. And Lincoln sat down afterwards to some scattered applause and turned to one of his aides and basically just wrote it off as, well, that was kind of a disaster. I don't know the words that he used exactly, but you got a note sometime later from Edward Everett, the main speaker, who told Mr. Lincoln, he said that I should hope that I could have come as near to the idea of why we were there in 2 hours as you were able to do in 2 minutes. And it's hard not to be moved by those words, standing here thinking of the sacrifice of these men. The cemetery itself is right next to the civilian cemetery here that gives Cemetery Hill its name. And the men are organized by state, the United States regular troops, and then by state. The unknown that were not known what state they were from are all together, and then the unknowns who they know what state they were are just with their particular state. It helps you to find the soldiers, but they're all in flat markers, so you have to kind of walk up and down the rows to find who you're looking for if there's somebody in particular that you want to find. I'm going to go to one grave in particular that maybe not a lot of people know is here, that has some historical significance. Well, behind me are the sections for New York and Pennsylvania. And over 800 New Yorkers buried here in the National Cemetery, over 500 Pennsylvanians. By far the states who were overrepresented the most in terms of the dead here at the Battle of Gettysburg. Almost a third of the men, in fact over a third of the men who lie in this cemetery were from those 2 states alone. I'm from Ohio, and a lot of the Ohio boys actually fought in the Western Theater under General Grant, my ancestor included. But there is one Ohio grave that I want to point out here, and it's right here below, and it's Private George Nixon of the 73rd Ohio. And if you're wondering what his connection is to history, you just look at his last name. George Nixon is the great-grandfather of Richard Milhous Nixon, who was the 37th President of the United States. And Nixon, a lot of his family actually comes from Ohio, Northeast Ohio, in fact, some of them, and that's the same area where my family's from. General Grant has roots there as well as other presidents who were born and raised there. But Richard Nixon's great-grandfather, who I believe was in his 40s and had a huge family at home. I'll put a photo up for you to see of him as I'm talking about this here later on, but he gave the ultimate sacrifice here at the Battle of Gettysburg.